A single mint chocolate placed on a restaurant bill increases tips by 23%. Not because diners are more satisfied, not because the food was better, because a tiny, uninvited gift, costing the restaurant almost nothing, created a psychological debt that the customer felt compelled to repay. That number comes from a 2002 study by David Strometz and his colleagues at Monmouth University. Strometz was not studying generosity. He was studying obligation. The waiter who brought just one mint with the bill saw tips rise by about 3%. 2 mints, left without comment, pushed tips up by 14%. But the waiter who left 1 mint then turned back as if on impulse and placed a second mint specifically for this table, personalizing the gesture, saw tips climb by 23%. The mint was not the point. The debt was the point. Before there were banks, contracts, currencies, or courts, human beings kept a ledger. It was invisible. It ran in the background of every social interaction, and it tracked one thing obsessively: who owed what to whom. In the dry savannas of East Africa 2 million years ago, a hunter who shared a portion of his kill with a hungry neighbor was not being charitable. He was making a deposit. The neighbor who ate that meat felt something uncomfortable, something that pressed against the ribs from the inside, an obligation, a debt. Tribes where individuals could defer consumption, share resources, and trust that favors would be returned had a survival advantage over tribes where every man hoarded everything for himself. Reciprocity was not a courtesy, it was a technology. The evolutionary psychologist Robert Trivers formalized this logic in 1971, calling it reciprocal altruism. The feeling of obligation was the mechanism that enforced the system. Evolution did not just select for the behavior, it selected for the emotion that drove the behavior. The guilt of not reciprocating. The shame of being seen as a freeloader. These feelings were not cultural accidents. They were engineering. Every human culture that anthropologists have ever studied operates this system. The Kumsan of the Kalahari have a gift economy built so precisely around reciprocal obligation that receiving a gift can be experienced as a kind of aggression because it creates a debt you now must carry. Claude Levi-Strauss spent his career documenting how gift exchange, not money, not barter, was the foundational structure of human social organization. You do not just exchange objects, you exchange obligations. The gift is an anchor. It binds. The debt ledger has been running for 2 million years, and somewhere around the 20th century, a small group of very clever people figured out how to hack it. In 1971, a Cornell University psychologist named Dennis Regan ran one of the most elegant experiments in the history of social psychology. Regan invited subjects to participate in what was described as a study on art appreciation. They were paired with a Confederate, an actor working for Regan. During a break, the Confederate left the room and returned with 2 Coca-Colas, one for himself, one for the subject. He said, "I asked him if I could get one for you, too." In a parallel condition, the Confederate returned with nothing. At the end of the session, the Confederate asked if the subject would buy raffle tickets at 25 cents each. Subjects who had received the free Coca-Cola bought, on average, twice as many tickets as those who had not. Regan then introduced a complicating variable. He had the Confederate behave either pleasantly or unpleasantly. Among subjects who had not received a Coke, the pleasant Confederate received far more sales. Liking mattered. But among subjects who had received the Coke, the unpleasant Confederate received almost exactly the same number of sales as the pleasant one. The debt overrode personal feeling. This is what separates reciprocity from simple generosity. Generosity is optional. Reciprocity is closer to a reflex, You repay because the debt is there, pressing inward, demanding resolution. Liking is irrelevant. The ledger must balance. On a Tuesday morning in 1973, at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago, a man in saffron robes approached a businessman. The monk pressed a small plastic flower into his hand and said, "This is a gift from the Hare Krishna Society." The businessman had not asked for it. He did not want it. He tried to hand it back. The monk said, "It is a gift. We ask nothing in return." Then, a few seconds later, the monk mentioned that the society did rely on donations and held out a collection tin. The businessman gave money. He did not know why. Robert Cialdini documented the Hare Krishna Society's airport fundraising strategy in his 1984 book, Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion. The society had discovered, through intuition rather than experiment, exactly what Regan had demonstrated in the laboratory. The unsolicited gift creates a real debt. The genius of the flower was its unavoidability. You could not unreceive it. Once it was in your hand, the ledger had already been opened. You now owed something to someone, even someone you had never met, even for a gift you did not want. The strategy was so effective that the society became one of the wealthiest new religious movements in the United States in the 1970s. By 1977, it owned major real estate, multiple farms, a publishing company, and restaurants across 3 continents. The flowers cost fractions of a cent each. The donations averaged several dollars. The ledger, across millions of interactions, was wildly profitable. Airports eventually banned them. The society evolved. They began giving away copies of the Bhagavad Gita. Travelers who accepted out of politeness and then felt the invisible tug of obligation donated anyway. The platform changed. The mechanism did not. On a Saturday afternoon, inside a Costco warehouse, a woman pauses at a small table where an employee holds out a toothpick, skewering a cube of teriyaki chicken. She eats it. She did not come for teriyaki chicken. She had a list. The chicken was not on it. She puts a bag of the teriyaki chicken in her cart. Food industry research published in the Journal of Marketing Research found that supermarket free samples increase sales of the sampled product by an average of between 2,000 and 2,600% during the sampling period. Even after the sampling table is removed, sales remain elevated for days. Costco's free sampling program is, from a psychological standpoint, a reciprocity engine running on an industrial scale. On busy weekends, locations operate 40 or 50 simultaneous sampling stations. Each one is a Regan experiment. Each one creates a micro-debt. The free sample is perhaps the most elegant deployment of reciprocity in commercial history because it is entirely voluntary. You can refuse, and yet the refusal itself feels rude. The social cost of refusal has been engineered into the offer. In a conference hotel in New Orleans in 1998, several hundred cardiologists gathered for a medical conference. Pharmaceutical sales representatives handed out pens, notepads, free lunches, and invitations to elegant dinners. Everyone knew the representatives were there to sell drugs, and yet, in the months following, prescription rates for the promoted drugs increased significantly among the cardiologists who had attended. A 2000 review published in JAMA found that even small gifts, worth less than $5, produced measurable changes in physician prescribing behavior. The effect was not proportional to the value of the gift. Any gift, regardless of size, opened the ledger. A 2016 analysis in JAMA Internal Medicine found that physicians who received a single industry-sponsored meal, average value $20, prescribed the promoted brand name drug at significantly higher rates. More meals meant higher prescription rates. The pharmaceutical industry in the United States spent approximately $20 billion on physician marketing in 2016. The industry did not call it manipulation. It called it relationship building. The ledger did not care what it was called. In 2010, Congress passed the Physician Payments Sunshine Act, requiring pharmaceutical companies to publicly disclose all payments to physicians above $10. The database now contains hundreds of millions of individual transactions. The ledger, at least, had become visible. On January 3, 2006, Jack Abramoff, a Washington lobbyist who had pleaded guilty to fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to bribe public officials, described his methodology to investigators. He had organized golf trips to Scotland for members of Congress costing approximately $150,000 per person. Abramoff understood that political corruption was not primarily about ideology. It was about debt. The golf trips, meals, sports tickets, campaign donations, each was a ledger entry. The representative who accepted was being placed in a state of obligation. The favor would be called in later. Transparency International has documented reciprocity-based gift corruption in 180 countries. Their analysis consistently shows that anti-corruption laws focusing on large cash bribes miss the majority of corrupt transactions, conducted through gifts and favors whose individual value is too small to prosecute, but whose cumulative psychological debt is decisive. In post-Soviet states, the gift economy of corruption operates through what Russian sociologists call blot, informal exchanges of favors and gifts that create networks of mutual obligation extending through every level of bureaucracy, business, and politics. A senior customs official who has attended many weddings, received many bottles of cognac, been introduced to many useful people, does not need to be bribed when a businessman wants expedited clearance. The ledger has been accruing for years. The obligation is structural. In the European Union's 2014 anti-corruption report, gift-giving to public officials was identified as the primary vector of corruption in 11 of 28 member states. The gifts were not necessarily expensive. Their power came from their timing, their personalization, and their presence in the recipient's psychological ledger. Here is something genuinely uncomfortable. The psychological debt created by an unsolicited gift is, in many cases, as powerful as the debt created by a gift you specifically requested. Social psychologists call this the uninvited favor trap. When someone does something for you, regardless of whether you asked, the brain's social accounting system registers a deficit. The fact that you did not initiate the exchange does not clear the entry. Subjects who received an unsolicited gift in a waiting room were significantly more likely to assist the gift giver with a subsequent task than subjects who received nothing, and than subjects who received a gift they had explicitly requested. The uninvited gift created the strongest debt. This is counterintuitive. Common sense suggests that a gift you wanted creates stronger gratitude. But gratitude and obligation are not the same system. Gratitude is optional. Obligation is structural. The ledger does not ask whether you wanted the entry. Free trials that automatically convert to paid subscriptions rely partly on reciprocity. The platform gave you something. The debt makes cancellation feel uncomfortable, even when the financial logic is clear. Real estate agents who bring small gifts to first meetings are not being generous. Buyers who received a gift stayed with that agent at higher rates, even when competitors offered better terms. The bottle of wine cost $40. The commission it preserved was worth thousands. In the spring of 2013, China opened a new hospital in the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa. It cost the Chinese government approximately $90 million, described as a gift. 2 years later, when a UN Human Rights Council resolution critical of China came to a vote, Ethiopia voted against adoption. Analysts at the Council on Foreign Relations found consistent patterns. Nations that received significant Chinese infrastructure investment showed measurably different voting alignment with Beijing. The aid had created what one researcher called structural gratitude. The United States understood this logic for decades before China. The Marshall Plan transferred approximately $13 billion to Western European nations after World War II, explicitly designed to create political alignment through material generosity. China now runs its version through the Belt and Road Initiative. The currency changes. The mechanism, create a debt, wait for repayment, has been the architecture of great power competition for a century. Robert Cialdini argues that the key to neutralizing reciprocity manipulation is not to refuse all gifts. That way lies social paralysis. The key is reframing. A genuine gift, one offered without expectation of return, deserves genuine appreciation. But a compliance device, a gift offered to create obligation, deserves to be mentally reclassified as what it is, a sales tactic. Once reclassified, the debt was fictitious. The ledger entry can be removed. This reframing requires one question. Was this gift offered to benefit me or to create an obligation in me? The free sample at Costco is a sales tactic. Eating it does not obligate you to purchase. The pharmaceutical lunch does not obligate you to change prescriptions. The free trial does not obligate you to subscribe. In the Japanese city of Kyoto, a Buddhist temple has operated a gift shop for over 4 centuries. The monks offer visitors free green tea as they enter. The gift is genuine hospitality, with no commercial timing engineered into it. The difference between that and the mint on the restaurant bill is intent, design, and the carefully calibrated personalization that Strometz's waiter deployed with the second chocolate. Knowing the difference is not cynicism, it is clarity. At a street market in Marrakesh, a carpet seller invites a tourist to sit down and drink mint tea. The tea is excellent. The seller is charming. And the tourist, who has drunk the tea, accepted the hospitality, spent 40 minutes in pleasant conversation, finds it almost physically impossible to leave without buying something. The tea has done its work. The ledger is open. The tourist who understands this can make a free choice. They can buy a carpet because they want one, or they can thank the seller sincerely and leave without purchasing. No carpet they did not want. No debt they did not consent to. The ledger, this time, belongs to them. The practical toolkit for navigating reciprocity has 3 components. First, pause before the debt solidifies. In the seconds after receiving an unsolicited gift, the reciprocity reflex activates within milliseconds. But reflection is still possible. Before the impulse becomes action, ask, did I want this? Is this a genuine gift or a mechanism? The pause creates the gap between stimulus and response where choice lives. Second, accept gifts without accepting obligations. You can thank the carpet seller for the tea and leave. You can eat the sample and not buy the chicken. You can attend the dinner and not update your prescriptions. Western culture has confused politeness with obligation. They are not the same thing. Third, give first, but genuinely. Reciprocity is among the most powerful tools for building authentic relationships and functional communities. When it operates as it evolved to operate, as real mutual support rather than a manufactured compliance trigger. The ledger, when it runs honestly, is one of the oldest and most effective social technologies in human history. The mint chocolate costs the restaurant approximately 3 cents. The 23% increase in tips it generates produces revenue many times that cost. 2 million years of evolutionary engineering went into that moment. The mint was just the trigger. The debt was always yours